You just got the promotion, the raise, the new title on your email signature. For about 6 hours, you felt unstoppable. Then a strange thing happened. You started thinking about the next one. Why does that happen? Why does the finish line always move the second you touch it? The answer isn't about you. It isn't about your job, or your discipline, or your personality. The real answer is far stranger. Your ambition isn't yours. It's a signal being sent to you from people who died 40,000 years ago, and they never meant it as a gift. Think about what ambition actually feels like, not the reward. The chase, the low hum of not enoughness that never fully turns off, no matter how much you accumulate. Psychologists call this the hedonic treadmill. You get the thing. You adapt to the thing. The thing stops feeling like anything, and your brain quietly starts scanning for the next thing. It isn't a flaw in your personality, it's a feature. It was built on purpose, just not for your happiness. To understand why, you have to go back, not centuries, hundreds of thousands of years, to small bands of humans moving across open grassland where status wasn't a metaphor, it was survival math. In a hunter-gatherer band of 30 or 40 people, your position in the group determined almost everything. Who ate first when meat was scarce, who got protection when danger showed up, who got chosen as a mate, and whose children lived long enough to have children of their own. Status wasn't about ego, it was about access. And over hundreds of thousands of years, one brutal rule got carved into your biology. The individuals who cared the most about their rank were the ones who survived to pass that caring down to you. Here's the part that should stop you cold. You inherited the wanting. You did not inherit the finish line. There was no finish line, because in a small band where everyone could see everyone else's rank at all times, status was relative, not absolute. It didn't matter how much you had, it mattered how much you had compared to the person next to you. And that comparison never stops resetting. Because the moment you rise, the average around you rises too. This is where the biology gets uncomfortable. Neuroscientist Robert Sapolsky spent decades studying wild baboon troops in Kenya, and what he found wasn't really about baboons. It was about hierarchy itself. Sapolsky discovered that an animal's rank in the group directly predicted its stress hormone levels, its cardiovascular health, its immune function, not just the animals at the bottom. Even animals actively climbing the hierarchy showed elevated stress because climbing meant constant vigilance, constant comparison, constant threat monitoring. The chase itself was the cost. Sound familiar? Now, here's the twist within the twist. You'd assume the ones at the very top would finally be safe from that stress, free from the wanting. But that's not what the data shows in humans either. In the 1960s, a British epidemiologist named Michael Marmot began a project that would become one of the most cited studies in the history of public health. It was called the Whitehall Study, and it tracked thousands of British civil servants across every level of the government hierarchy, from senior officials down to the lowest clerical grades. The obvious assumption was that the people at the top, with the most control and the least danger, would have the best health outcomes, and the people at the bottom would suffer the most stress. That part was true, but what shocked researchers was the shape of the curve. Health and mortality didn't split into two groups, powerful and powerless. It moved in a straight line, grade by grade, rank by rank. Even senior managers, just one tier below the very top, had measurably worse health outcomes than the executives directly above them. Status wasn't just about danger anymore, it was about position, relative to whoever stood one rung higher. The hierarchy itself was the stressor. Not poverty, not literal survival threat. Rank. That's the treadmill laid bare in a controlled dataset. It doesn't stop at the top, because there's always someone appearing to be one rung higher, or the fear that you'll slip one rung lower. Your ancestors' brains never evolved an off switch for status tracking, because in the environment they lived in, there wasn't one. The band was the whole world. There was no early retirement from being watched. But something else happened along the way, something that complicates the story. Anthropologist Christopher Boehm spent years studying surviving hunter-gatherer societies and comparing them to what we know of ancient human bands, and he found a striking pattern. These groups didn't just tolerate status seeking, they actively fought it. Boehm documented what he called reverse dominance hierarchies, where a band would gang up, socially or even physically, against any member who got too aggressive about claiming status over others. Bragging was mocked, hoarding was shamed. A hunter who killed the big animal was expected to downplay it, sometimes even insult his own kill, so the group wouldn't accuse him of arrogance. Why would evolution build a status-hungry brain and then build a culture specifically to suppress it? Because both systems were necessary. The internal drive kept individuals working, striving, competing for resources and mates. The external culture kept that drive from tearing the group apart. You inherited the engine, you didn't inherit the brakes. Because the brakes used to be your neighbors, your aunt, the elder who'd mock you at the fire if you got too full of yourself. That social machinery doesn't scale to a city of 9 million strangers, or a company of 50,000 employees, or an app that shows you a global leaderboard of everyone else's highlight reel. The engine is still running, the brakes are gone. This is where the ancient wiring turns into a modern trap. In a band of 40 people, your status comparisons had a ceiling. You could see everyone. You could only ever be compared to the people physically around you. Today, your brain runs the exact same comparison software, but the input has changed completely. You're not comparing yourself to 40 people anymore. You're comparing yourself to millions, curated, filtered, optimized to look like they're all winning. The hardware evolved for a village. It's now trying to process a planet. Psychologist Leon Festinger described this comparison mechanism back in 1954, long before social media existed, calling it social comparison theory. He argued that humans don't evaluate their own worth in absolute terms, they evaluate it relative to others nearby. Festinger was working with office workers and social clubs. He had no idea his theory would end up explaining why a teenager with a phone can feel like a failure despite having more comfort, more information, and more opportunity than any pharaoh in history. So what do you do with wiring like this? You can't switch it off. It's not a bad habit. It's not a mindset problem you can journal your way out of. It's the operating system underneath the operating system. But here's the reframe that actually matters. The treadmill was never designed to make your ancestors happy. It was designed to make them keep moving. Movement was the goal, not satisfaction, which means the chase you feel isn't proof that something is wrong with you. It's proof that the system is working exactly as built. The mistake isn't wanting more. The mistake is expecting the wanting to ever stop on its own, and organizing your entire sense of worth around a mechanism that was never built to deliver a verdict. Your ancestors who survived weren't the ones who found permanent satisfaction. They were the ones who kept climbing anyway, restless, unfinished, alive. That restlessness got you here. It fed you, sheltered you, and multiplied you across a continent and then a planet. It was never broken. It was just never supposed to feel like enough. So tonight, when you catch yourself already thinking about the next promotion, the next milestone, the next number that has to go up before you'll finally let yourself rest, remember what that feeling actually is. It isn't a personal failing chasing you down. It's a message 40,000 years old, still being delivered right on schedule. The relentless pursuit of status and wealth was never personal ambition. It's a biological mandate from your ancestors, and it was never written for your happiness. It was written for your survival. Somewhere along the way, you just started reading it as a verdict on your worth, instead of what it always was, instructions to keep going.